The emergency room doors burst open at 2:47 a.m., and Dr. Elena Martinez knew immediately that this wasn't a typical gunshot wound case. The woman being rushed in on the gurney had an entourage of suited guards who moved with military precision, their eyes scanning every corner of the hospital like predators assessing territory. GSW to the shoulder, entry and exit wounds, significant blood loss. The paramedic rattled off as they wheeled the patient into Trauma Bay 3. Eleanor pulled on her gloves and approached, her dark eyes focusing solely on the patient. The woman on the gurney was striking even in her injured state shirt cheekbones, ink black hair now matted with sweat, and eyes that burned with an intensity that made Eleanor's breath catch for just a moment. Everyone out except medical personnel, Eleanor ordered, her voice calm but firm. "We stay with Ms. Volkov," one of the guards stated, his hand moving subtly toward his jacket. The patient's eyes opened fully then, settling on Elena with startling clarity despite the pain. "Dmitri, out," she commanded, her accent rich and unmistakable. "Russian." "The doctor needs space." Eleanor worked quickly, her hands steady as she assessed the wound. "I'm Dr. Martinez. You're going to be fine. But I need to know if there are any other injuries." "Just my pride," the woman said, a hint of dark humor in her voice even as she winced. "And please, call me Katerina." Over the next 3 hours, Elena performed surgery to repair the damage, extract bullet fragments, and ensure no major vessels have been compromised. When Katerina woke in recovery, Eleanor was there, checking her vitals. "You saved my life, doctor," Katerina said softly. "I saved your shoulder." "You weren't in mortal danger," Eleanor replied, making notes on her tablet without looking up. "Still, I owe you. You owe me nothing except compliance with follow-up appointments and physical therapy." Now, Elena did look up, meeting those intense eyes directly, and perhaps an explanation for how you ended up with a bullet hole at 3 in the morning. Katerina smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "I'm afraid that's classified. So is patient confidentiality. Whatever you tell me stays between us. Then let's just say I'm in a competitive business, and someone wanted to eliminate the competition. Elena should have left it at that. Should have treated Katerina like any other patient and moved on with her life. But something in those eyes, that strength wrapped in vulnerability, made her pause. "Well, Ms. Volkov, you're going to need to stay for observation. Standard procedure for gunshot wounds." "Katerina," the woman insisted, "and I'm afraid I can't stay long. I have obligations. You have stitches that will tear if you move wrong, and a risk of infection. Your obligations can wait 48 hours. It was the beginning of something neither of them could have predicted. Katerina proved to be a difficult patient. She refused the standard hospital gown and dignified, insisted on making phone calls at all hours. Business doesn't sleep, and somehow had gourmet meals delivered despite hospital policy. The food here is criminal. Elena found herself checking on Katerina more often than her other patients, telling herself it was purely professional concern. "You're back," Katerina observed when Ellen entered for the 4th time that day. "Miss me already, doctor? I'm ensuring you're not tearing your stitches with all that pacing I hear you doing. These walls are thin." Katerina was sitting up in bed, her shoulder properly bandaged, wearing what appeared to be designer silk pajamas. "Sit. You look exhausted." "I don't socialize with patients." "I wasn't aware medical monitoring constituted socializing." Katerina gestured to the chair beside her bed. "Please, humor an injured woman." Against her better judgment, Elena sat. 5 minutes. "Tell me about yourself, Dr. Martinez. What brings a woman of your obvious intelligence to the chaos of emergency medicine?" "That's a long story. I have time. In fact, you've ensured I have nothing but time for the next 36 hours. And somehow, Elena found herself talking about growing up in a small Texas town, about being the first in her family to attend college, about choosing medicine because she wanted to save lives, not just observe them. She talked about the exhaustion, the trauma, the moments of pure joy when a patient survived against the odds. Katerina listened with an intensity that made Elena feel truly seen for the first time in years. And you? Eleanor asked finally. What's your story? I inherited my father's business when I was 23. He believed women were meant to be ornaments, not operators. I proved him wrong. Katerina's smile was sharp. Now I run the most efficient import-export operation on the East Coast. Import-export, Eleanor repeated skeptically. Among other things, the legal kind of things. Doctor, are you asking if I'm a criminal? Katerina's eyes sparkled with amusement. I'm asking if I should be concerned. About what? I'm just a businesswoman who had an unfortunate accident. Elena stood. Your 5 minutes are up. Will you come back? I have other patients. That wasn't my question. Elena paused at the door. Yes, I'll be back. Over the next day, they talk more. Katerina was brilliant, funny, surprisingly well-read, and absolutely magnetic. She asked Eleanor about her interests, her dreams, her favorite books, and music. She listened like every word mattered. When discharge papers were ready, Eleanor felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. Your physical therapy starts next week, Eleanor said. Maintaining professional distance. Don't skip appointments. Would you like to get coffee? Katerina asked suddenly. I don't date patients. I'll no longer be your patient in approximately. Katerina checked her watch. 3 minutes when I sign these papers. That's not how it works. How about this? I'll ask again in 1 month. If you're still not interested, I'll never mention it again. Elena should have said no, should have walked away. Instead, she found herself saying, 1 month? Katerina kept her word about the physical therapy appointments. She showed up on time, worked hard, and never complained about the pain. Elena found excuses to check on her progress, to observe the sessions, to offer medical advice. You're healing remarkably well, Eleanor said after the 3rd session. I have excellent motivation, Katerina replied, and the look she gave Elena left no doubt about what that motivation was. They began running into each other. At the coffee shop near the hospital, at the bookstore on 5th Avenue, at the art gallery opening that Elena's friend had dragged her to. This is starting to feel like stalking, Eleanor said when Katerina appeared at the gallery, stunning in a black suit that probably cost more than Elena's monthly rent. This is coincidence, Katerina said smoothly. I'm a patron of the arts, though I confess I didn't expect to see you here. My friend is dating the artist. Then we both have legitimate reasons for being here. Katerina gestured toward a painting. What do you think of this piece? They spent the evening discussing art, philosophy, and everything else under the sun. Elena learned that Katerina spoke 5 languages, had a degree in economics from Cambridge, and had a weakness for Russian literature and American jazz. You're not what I expected, Elena admitted as they stood on the gallery steps, the city lights twinkling round them. What did you expect? Someone harder, more dangerous? Katerina supplied. I am dangerous, Elena. Make no mistake about that. It was the first time she'd used Elena's first name, and hearing it in the accented voice sent a shiver down Elena's spine. I should go, Eleanor said. Double quotes. Yes, you should. But Katerina didn't move, and neither did Elena. The month passed. Katerina sent flowers to the hospital for saving my life. Then books. I noticed the medical texts on your shelf were outdated. Then finally, on day 30, a single card that read, coffee? K. Eleanor texted back, Saturday, 2 p.m., you choose the place. Katerina chose a small cafe in Brooklyn, far from the hospital and Elena's usual haunts. It was cozy, intimate, with excellent espresso and pastries that melted on the tongue. I wasn't sure you'd come, Katerina admitted. I wasn't sure either. What changed her mind? Elena considered lying, maintaining professional distance. But Katerina deserved honesty. You did. You're not what I thought you'd be. And what did you think? A patient, a case, someone who'd walk out of the hospital and disappear from my life. And now I'm having coffee with you. Against my better judgment, Katerina left, rich and genuine. I'll take that as a compliment. They talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing, about Elena's family in Texas, who still didn't fully understand her choice to move to New York, about Katerina's complicated relationship with her heritage, and her father's legacy, about dreams and fears and the peculiar loneliness of living in a city of millions. Can I see you again? Katerina asked as they stood outside the cafe. Yes. Dinner next time. Dinner, Eleanor agreed. Katerina's smile was brilliant. She leaned in slowly, giving Elena time to pull away, and pressed a gentle kiss to her cheek. Until then, Dr. Martinez. Elena watched her walk away, heart racing, knowing she was stepping into something that could change everything. They fell into a rhythm. Dinner on Saturdays, coffee on Wednesdays when Elena shift allowed. They went to museums and jazz clubs and hole-in-the-wall restaurants that Katerina somehow knew about. Katerina was attentive, generous, and surprisingly romantic. But there were gaps, calls that Katerina had to take, disappearing for hours with only vague explanations. The ever-present guards who watched from a distance. The way Katerina never invited Eleanor to her home or introduced her to anyone from her life. After 6 weeks, Eleanor couldn't ignore it anymore. Who are you really? She asked over dinner at a Russian restaurant in Manhattan. Katerina set down her fork carefully. I've never lied to you. But you haven't told me the whole truth either. The truth is complicated, then uncomplicated. Katerina was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she said, let's go somewhere private. They went to Katerina's penthouse, and Elena was struck by the contrast. The art on the walls was museum quality. The view overlooked Central Park. Everything spoke of wealth and power and danger. My father was Dmitry Volkov. Katerina began, pouring them both vodka. Perhaps you've heard of him. Elena had. Even she, who avoided news of organized crime, knew that name. One of the most powerful Russian mob bosses on the East Coast until his death 5 years ago. I know what you're thinking, Katerina continued. And you're right. I run the Volkov organization. Drugs, weapons, protection, all of it. I'm what your world would call a criminal. What my world calls a survivor. Eleanor should have left, should have walked out and never looked back. Instead, she asked, why are you telling me this? Because I'm falling in love with you. And I won't build that on lies. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. You barely know me, Elena whispered. I know you better than you think. I know you take your coffee black with 1 sugar. I know you volunteer at the free clinic on Sundays. I know you send half your paycheck to your parents in Texas because your father's medical bills are crushing them. I know you're brilliant and compassionate and stronger than you give yourself credit for. You investigated me. I protect what matters to me. And you matter, Elena. Elena stood, pacing to the window. The city stretched below, indifferent to their small human drama. What you do, it hurts people. Yes, people die. Yes, and you're okay with that. Katerina joined her at the window. No, but I'm realistic about the world we live in. If not me, someone else. Someone crueler. Someone without rules. That's a justification. It's the truth. Katerina turned to face her. I won't apologize for who I am or what I do, but I will promise you this: I will never lie to you, never put you in danger, and never ask you to compromise your principles. What are you asking from me? A chance, just a chance to see where this goes. Elena should have said no. Everything rational in her screamed to walk away. But when Katerina looked at her with those intense eyes, full of hope and vulnerability, Elena found herself saying, one condition, anything, no more secrets between us. If you're going to be part of my life, I need honesty. You have my word. Elena stepped closer, closing the distance between them. Then kiss me properly this time. Katerina did, and it was nothing like the gentle kiss on the cheek. It was fire and passion and promise. It was the beginning of something dangerous and beautiful and utterly inevitable. Loving Katerina Volkov was like dancing on a knife's edge. Elena learned to navigate towards the hospital with its fluorescent lights and desperate saves, and Katerina's world of power and shadows. Katerina kept her promise about honesty. She explained the structure of her organization, the territories, the uneasy alliances. She introduced Eleanor to her inner circle: Dmitry, her head of security; Alexei, her financial advisor; Irina, her only female lieutenant. They think I'm crazy, Katerina said after the first dinner with her associates. Are they wrong? Elena asked. Probably not, but you make me want to be crazy. Elena also kept her world separate initially, but 3 months in, she invited Katerina to the hospital fundraiser. Are you sure? Katerina asked. This is your professional space. You're part of my life. I'm not hiding you. Katerina wore a midnight blue dress that made her look like a queen. Elena's colleagues were charmed, intrigued, and more than a little intimidated. Dr. Sarah Chen, Elena's best friend, pulled her aside. Please tell me you know what you're doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. Elena, I've known you for 8 years. You're the most careful, rational person I know. This woman is everything I didn't know I needed. Sarah studied her face. You're in love with her? Yes. Does she feel the same? She says she does. Then I hope she's worth the risk. She was. Katerina was attentive and supportive in ways Elena had never experienced. When Eleanor had a bad shift, Katerina had her favorite meal waiting. When Elena's father's condition worsened, Katerina arranged for the best specialists without being asked. When Elena needed space, Katerina gave it without question. But there were hard moments too. The night Eleanor stitched up one of Katerina's men, knowing the wound came from a gang war. The time Katerina came home with bruised knuckles and a cold look in her eyes. The constant awareness that the woman she loved lived in a world where violence was currency. I can't do this anymore, Eleanor said one night after a particularly brutal shift where a 15-year-old had died from gang crossfire. Katerina, who had been reading on the couch, set down her book. Tell me, a kid died tonight, 15 years old, caught in a shootout between rival gangs. And all I could think was, is this what you do? Is this the world you perpetuate? That wasn't my organization. Does it matter? It's all the same system. Violence begetting violence. Katerina stood, moving to kneel in front of Elena's chair. You're right. It is the same system, and I am part of it. If you need to leave, I understand. That's it. You're not going to fight for us. I will fight for you every day of my life, Elena. But I won't fight to keep you in a situation that destroys you. I love you too much for that. Elena looked down at this powerful woman kneeling before her, vulnerability written across her features. I don't want to leave. I want to find a way to make this work. Then we'll find a way. They did. Eleanor set boundaries, no details about Katerina's business, no involvement in anything illegal, no weapons in their shared spaces. Katerina agreed to all of it and added one of her own. She began funneling money into community programs, youth centers, addiction treatment facilities. You're changing me, Katerina said one night. -1 months into their relationship. Is that bad? It's terrifying. I've spent my whole life being hard, being untouchable. You make me want to be soft. You can be both. Can I? Eleanor pulled her close. You already are. You're still wrapped in silk. And I love every contradiction. The threat came from within Katerina's organization. Viktor Kozlov, a lieutenant who had served under her father, decided that a woman, especially one softened by a relationship, had no place leading the Volkov Empire. Elena knew something was wrong when Katerina came home tense, surrounded by twice the usual security. What happened? Internal politics. Nothing for you to worry about. Katerina, no secrets. Remember, Katerina's jaw tightened. Viktor is making a move. He thinks I'm weak, and he's convincing others. Are you in danger? Possibly. Then we go to the police. Elena, you know that's not how this works. Then tell me how it works, because I'm not losing you to some power-hungry asshole. What followed were the hardest 2 weeks of Elena's life. Katerina barely slept, always surrounded by guards, always planning. Elena insisted on staying close, even when Katerina tried to send her away for safety. If you're in danger, I'm in danger, Elena argued. We're in this together. The confrontation came at a warehouse in Red Hook. Katerina had to meet with her lieutenants to settle the dispute. Elena insisted on coming, if only to wait in the car. I need you to promise me something, Katerina said in the car. If things go wrong, Dmitry will get you out. You don't fight. You don't argue. You just go. Katerina, promise me. I promise. Katerina kissed her, deep and desperate. I love you. Whatever happens, remember that. Elena watched through the car window as Katerina entered the warehouse, flanked by Dmitry and Alexei. Minutes stretched into hours. Then gunshots. Elena's medical training kicked in before thought could. She grabbed the first aid kit and ran toward the warehouse. Dmitry's shouts behind her lost in the roar of her heartbeat. Inside was chaos. Bodies on the ground, smoke, and Katerina standing over Victor's prone form, gun in hand, blood streaming from a cut on her temple. I told you to stay in the car, Katerina said, her voice deadly calm. You're bleeding. Elena approached, hands already assessing the wound. Sit down. It's just a graze. Sit down. To everyone's surprise, Katerina sat. Elena cleaned and bandaged the wound with steady hands, aware of the watching eyes of Katerina's men. Is he dead? Eleanor asked quietly, gesturing to Victor. Double quotes no. Though he might wish he were. Good. Killing him would have haunted you. Katerina caught her hand. You shouldn't have come in. You think I could stay away when you might be hurt? Something shifted in Katerina's expression. She stood, addressing her gathered lieutenants, while still holding Elena's hand. Let this be clear. This woman is under my protection. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or even looks at her wrong answers to me. Understood. A chorus of agreement. That night, in the safety of the penthouse, Katerina finally broke. She cried in Elena's arms, all the fear and adrenaline releasing in shaking sobs. I could have lost everything today. Katerina whispered. Lost you. But you didn't. I'm here. We're both here. I'm trying to build something different, Elena. A legitimate business empire. But it takes time. And men like Victor, they can't see past the old ways. Then we'll build it together, slowly. Carefully, but together. Change came slowly, as Katerina had warned. She began transitioning the organization's resources into legitimate businesses, real estate, technology, import-export of legal goods. It wasn't clean or simple, and there were still aspects that made Eleanor uncomfortable. But it was progress. Elena, meanwhile, accepted a position as head of trauma surgery at the hospital. It meant less time in the ER's chaos and more time developing programs and teaching. It also meant more predictable hours to spend with Katerina. They moved into a new penthouse together, one that felt like theirs rather than just Katerina's. Elena insisted on plants and warm colors. Katerina filled it with books and art. They created a sanctuary from their respective storms. I never thought I'd have this, Katerina said one Sunday morning, watching Eleanor make pancakes in their sun-filled kitchen. Pancakes, normalcy, peace. Someone who knows everything about me and stays anyway. Eleanor flipped a pancake. You make it sound simple. Some days I still question my sanity. And the other days, I know exactly where I belong. They attended charity galas where Katerina's checkbook opened doors, and Elena's medical expertise gave them credibility. They vacationed in places where no one knew either of their names. They built a life brick by careful brick. Elena's family came to visit, and Katerina charmed Elena's mother with her cooking and her father with her knowledge of vintage cars. They didn't ask questions about Katerina's business, and Katerina didn't volunteer information. It was an unspoken agreement. Your daughter saved my life, Katerina told them over dinner. And then she gave me a reason to live it differently. Elena's mother smiled. She has a gift for healing. Always has. But not everything could be healed. There were nights when Katerina woke from nightmares, the ghosts of her past claiming their due. There were moments when Eleanor saw something in Katerina's eyes, a hardness, a capacity for violence that reminded her of the world they navigated. Do you regret it? Katerina asked one night after a particularly bad nightmare. Choosing this life, choosing me? Elena considered giving a comforting lie, but offered truth instead. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if the ambulance had brought you to a different hospital. if someone else had stitched you up, and then I realized that even knowing everything I know now, I'd make the same choice. You're worth the complexity, Katarina. You're worth the fear and the uncertainty and the hard questions. Why? Because you make me believe in second chances, in redemption, in love that transforms instead of just existing. Katarina pulled her close. I will spend every day earning that faith. The crisis came from an unexpected direction. Elena's hospital budget cuts threatened to close the trauma center, the very place where she and Katarina had met. They can't do this, Elena said, pacing their living room with the closure notice in hand. We serve the poorest neighborhoods. People will die without immediate trauma care. Katarina looked up from her laptop. How much do they need? It's not just money. It's politics, insurance companies, hospital administration. How much, Elena? $15 million to keep it operational for 2 years while they restructure. Katarina made a phone call, then another. Within a week, she had organized a coalition of donors, including several of her now legitimate business associates, to contribute to a foundation supporting the trauma center. You can't just throw money at this, Elena protested. People will ask questions about where it came from. All legal, all traceable, all clean, Katarina assured her. I've been building these businesses for 3 years now. It's time they started giving back. The trauma center was saved. Elena was lauded for her fundraising efforts, though she gave Katarina most of the credit privately. You did this for me, Elena said. I did this for us. For the place where our story began, and for all the people who need second chances. Just like I did, but the publicity brought scrutiny. Investigative journalists began digging into Katarina's past, connecting dots between the woman donating to hospitals and the daughter of Dmitry Volkov. They're going to print a story, Katarina said, showing Elena the reporter's preliminary questions about my father, about the organization, about how I'm laundering money through charitable donations. Are you? No. But perception matters more than truth in these situations. Elena read the questions, her medical mind already strategizing. Then we control the narrative. What do you mean? You give an exclusive interview, you tell your story, the whole story, your father's death, your decision to transform the organization, your work toward legitimate business. You own your past and your present. They'll crucify me, maybe, or maybe people will see what I see, someone trying to change, trying to be better. Katarina agreed. The interview was brutal and honest. She didn't shy away from her past, but emphasized her current work. She spoke about transformation, about the complexities of leaving a criminal empire, about building something new from ashes. The reaction was mixed. Some called her a criminal trying to buy respectability. Others saw her as a cautionary tale of inheritance and choice. But the donation stayed legal. The trauma center remained open, and slowly, Katarina's legitimate businesses began to overshadow her infamous legacy. Through it all, Elena stood beside her. She gave her own interview, speaking about falling in love with someone complicated, about choosing to believe in change, about the medical imperative to heal rather than judge. You didn't have to do that, Katarina said. After Elena's interview aired, yes, I did. We're in this together, remember? Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. 2 years after that night in the emergency room, Katarina planned a surprise. She rented out the entire hospital roof garden, the place where Elena often went to decompress after difficult shifts. She filled it with lights and Elena's favorite flowers, white roses and purple lilacs. Elena emerged from a shift to find Dmitry waiting with a small smile. Ms. Volkov requests your presence on the roof. Is everything okay? Everything is perfect. Doctor, the roof took Elena's breath away. Katarina stood in the center, wearing the same suit she'd worn the night they met at the art gallery, her hair pulled back, her expression nervous in a way Elena rarely saw. What is this? Elena asked. Do you remember what you said to me the night we met, after you'd stitched me up, and I was being difficult about staying? I said a lot of things. You said, your obligations can wait 48 hours. You were so fierce, so certain. You didn't care that I had guards, or money, or power. You cared that I healed properly. You were my patient. I was a stranger with a bullet hole and too much attitude. But you saw past all of that. You've been seeing past all of it ever since. Katarina dropped to one knee, and Elena's breath caught. I spent my whole life thinking I had to be hard to survive. That softness was weakness. Then you walked into my life and showed me that strength comes in many forms. You fight for your patients with everything you have. You fight for us even when it's terrifying. You fight for the person I'm trying to become. She pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a simple platinum band with a single diamond. Elena Martinez, you saved my life that night in the air. But more than that, you gave me a reason to build a life worth saving. Will you marry me? Elena's eyes filled with tears. You know this will be complicated. I'm counting on it. We'll have to figure out so many things. We'll figure them out together. Your world and mine don't always align. Elena, Katarina interrupted gently. Is that a yes, or are you going to give me a medical lecture on the risks of prolonged kneeling? Elena laughed through her tears. Yes, yes, of course, yes. Katarina slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling Elena into a kiss that felt like coming home. Around them, the city hummed with life, ambulances wailing, people rushing, lights twinkling, their own complicated, beautiful, impossible world. I love you, Elena whispered against Katarina's lips. I love you too, my healer, my conscience, my home. They stood there as the sun set over the city. Two women from vastly different worlds who had found each other in the chaos of an emergency room and built something neither had thought possible. A love that transformed, that challenged, that endured. The trauma center's lights flicker on below them, ready for whatever the night would bring. Lives would be saved, hearts would be mended, and somewhere in the midst of it all, a former Mafia queen and a dedicated surgeon would continue building their unexpected, extraordinary life together. Because some love stories don't follow the rules. Some love stories are written in emergency rooms and penthouse apartments, in honest confessions and hard-won transformations. Some love stories remind us that people are capable of change, that love can exist in complicated spaces, that healing takes many forms. And this was one of those love stories, messy and beautiful and absolutely, perfectly real. Planning a wedding when one bride was a former mob boss and the other was a prominent surgeon proved to be an exercise in diplomacy, compromise, and occasional hilarity. Your mother wants to invite 200 people from Texas, Katarina said, scrolling through the guest list on her tablet. And your associates want to bring their entire security details, Elena countered, looking over her shoulder. They were sitting in their kitchen on a rare Saturday morning off, but still in pajamas, coffee growing cold as they tackled the logistics of merging their very different worlds into one celebration. What if we did to ceremonies? Eleanor suggested, something small and intimate for us. And then a larger reception. Katarina's eyes lit up. I love that. Where would you want the ceremony? The hospital roof garden, where you proposed, perfect. And the reception, somewhere that can handle both my family from Texas and your business associates without anyone having a heart attack. They settle on a historic mansion in Westchester, neutral ground with enough security to satisfy Katarina's people and enough charm to please Elena's family. The planning brought unexpected moments of joy. Elena's mother and Katarina spent hours discussing traditional Russian versus Texan cuisine, eventually creating a fusion menu that made everyone happy. Sarah Chen became the unofficial wedding coordinator, somehow managing to wrangle both Texas relatives and former mobsters into cooperation. I never thought I'd be seating chart planning round which of your guests might be armed, Sarah said to Katarina one afternoon. None of them will be armed at the wedding, Katarina assured her. I've made that very clear, and they'll listen. They will if they want to stay on my good side. Elena's father, still recovering from his illness, but stronger now thanks to the specialists Katarina had arranged, pulled his daughter aside 1 week before the wedding. "Are you sure about this, Major?" he asked in Spanish, their private language. "More sure than I've been about anything, Popper. She comes from a hard world. She's building a better one. And she loves me. She loves all of us. Look at what she's done for you, for the hospital, for the community." Her father nodded slowly. "She has a good heart. I see it when she looks at you. But promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll keep being the light that helps her find her way. She needs that. I promise." The ceremony itself was small, just 40 people on the hospital roof at sunset. Elena wore a simple white dress with lace sleeves. Katerina wore an elegant cream suit with a silk shirt the exact color of Elena's eyes. Sarah officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose. We're here today because two people met in the most unlikely circumstances and chose to build something beautiful from chaos. Elena and Katerina have written their own vows. Elena went first, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "Katerina, when you came into Meyer that night, I thought I was just doing my job. I had no idea I was meeting the person who would change everything. You've taught me that people aren't defined by their worst moments, that change is always possible, and that love can exist even in complicated spaces. I promise to be your partner, your conscience when you need it, your defender always, and your home. I love you for who you were, who you are, and who you're becoming." Katerina's hands trembled slightly as she held Elena's. "Elena, I spent my whole life believing I had to be hard to survive. That showing softness was weakness. That love was a luxury I couldn't afford. Then you looked at me in that emergency room, really looked at me and saw past everything I used to protect myself. You saw someone worth saving, worth loving, worth building a life with. You've made me believe in redemption, in second chances, in the possibility of becoming someone better. I promise to honor your courage, to protect your heart, to never stop working to deserve the gift of your love, and to build a life with you that makes the world a little bit brighter. You are my miracle, my healer, my home." There wasn't a dry eye on the roof when they kissed, sealing promises that had been 2 years in the making. The reception was a spectacle. Elena's family danced with Katerina's business associates. Dmitry, Katerina's stoic head of security, was charmed into a waltz by Elena's mother. The food was incredible, the vodka flowed freely, and for one perfect night, the boundaries between their worlds dissolved. "Happy?" Katerina whispered to Elena as they slow danced to a jazz standard, deliriously. I didn't know happiness like this existed." They honeymooned in Croatia, a country that held meaning for both of them. Elena's mother's family had roots there, and Katerina had visited as a child with her grandmother before her father's world consumed everything. They spent 2 weeks exploring coastal towns, eating fresh seafood, and simply being together without the weight of their respective responsibilities. "I could stay here forever," Eleanor said one evening as they watched the sunset over the Adriatic. "We could. I could run everything remotely. You could volunteer at local clinics. You're serious. I'm always serious about you. But I also know you love your work. And I'm not done building what we started. Then we'll come back. Every year. This can be our place. Our place," Katerina repeated, pulling Elena close. "I like the sound of that." Their first year of marriage was an adjustment. Katerina's business, now fully legitimate, but still demanding, required constant attention. Elena's promotion to chief of surgery brought political challenges she hadn't anticipated. They had to learn to navigate their careers while nurturing their relationship. The real test came when Elena discovered she was being investigated by the medical board. An anonymous complaint had been filed, suggesting she was accepting money from criminal sources, or a direct attack on her integrity. That traced back to Katerina's past. "They're saying I used your illegal money to fund the trauma center," Elena said, pacing their living room with the investigation notice. "They're questioning every donation, every grant, everything we've built." Katerina's expression went cold in a way Eleanor rarely saw anymore. "Who filed the complaint? It's anonymous." "But Katerina, that's not the point. If this investigation finds anything questionable, My career is over. The trauma center could lose funding. Everything we've worked for will be fine because every dollar was clean, every donation traceable, every business legitimate. Katerina stood, her voice firm. I knew this might come someday. I've been preparing for it. What do you mean? I have 3 years of audited financial records. Every business transaction, every source of income, every donation tracked and verified by independent accounting firms. My lawyers have been building this documentation since we started transitioning the business. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to live without that weight. But now we use it. The investigation was grueling. Elena had to provide testimony, documents, explanations for every interaction with Katerina's foundation. The medical board brought in forensic accountants who examined every detail. Through it all, Katerina was steady. She provided documentation, gave depositions, answered every question with calm precision. She opened her books completely, holding nothing back. You're risking everything, Eleanor said one night after a particularly brutal day of depositions. If they find anything from the transition period, anything at all, they won't, because I did this right. For you, for us. I knew we'd face this scrutiny someday, and I made sure that when we did, we could stand in the light. The investigation took 6 months. 6 months of stress, public scrutiny, and constant worry. Elena's colleagues were supportive, but she could feel the whispers, the doubts. Finally, the medical board released their findings. No evidence of impropriety. Every donation had been legal, every source verified. Eleanor Martinez was clear of all allegations. The anonymous complainant was eventually revealed to be a rival surgeon who had been passed over for chief of surgery, someone with a grudge and nothing to do with Katerina's past at all. It's over, Elena said when the official letter arrived. Collapsing onto their couch with relief, Katerina sat beside her, pulling her close. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Don't be sorry. You prepared for this. You protected us. I'll always protect us. That's my promise. But the investigation had revealed something else. Not all of Katerina's past associates were happy with her transformation. There were people who saw her legitimate success as a betrayal, who wanted the old Volkov organization back. The threat came in the form of Sergei Petrov, one of her father's oldest friends, who had been quietly building opposition among the remaining old guard. He's consolidating power, Dmitry reported during a tense meeting at their home, claiming you've gone soft, that you've abandoned the family business for American respectability. What does he want? Elena asked. The organization, or what's left of it, the territories, the connections, the reputation. Katerina's jaw tightened. He can have none of those things. They're mine, and I've transformed them. He's threatening to expose your past in ways that could destroy the legitimate businesses, claiming partnerships with criminal enterprises, suggesting money laundering, creating doubt. Elena watched her wife, seeing the war playing out behind those intense eyes. The old Katerina would have met this with violence. The new Katerina was searching for a different path. Set up a meeting, Katerina said finally. Just him and me. Neutral ground. That's not safe. Dmitry protested. It's necessary. Eleanor grabbed Katerina's hand. Then, I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You said no more secrets. No more separation. If you're walking into danger, I'm there. Elena, I'm there. We're partners. In everything. The meeting was set at a restaurant Katerina owned, neutral enough to avoid ambush, controlled enough to prevent escalation. Sergei arrived with 2 bodyguards. Katerina brought only Dmitry, with Elena seated at her side. Sergei was in his 60s, silver hair and sharp-eyed, radiating old-world authority. Little Kotyer, he said, using her childhood nickname. You've gone far from your father's teachings. My father's teachings nearly destroyed this family. Katerina replied calmly. I've built something sustainable, something that will last. You've built a house of cards. Pretty American dreams that will collapse when the wind blows. What do you want, Sergei? I want the old organization back. The power, the respect, the fear. I want what your father built before you dismantled it for this woman. He gestured dismissively at Elena. Elena felt Katerina tense beside her, but remained silent. Letting her wife handle this. The old organization is gone, Katerina said. What I've built in its place is worth more than anything my father had. Legitimate businesses worth billions. Influence that doesn't require violence. Respect that's earned rather than feared. Weakness. Strength. Real strength. The kind that doesn't crumble the moment someone stronger comes along. Sergei leaned forward. You have 1 week to sign over the territories and connections, or I release everything your father's files. The transition documents. Every dirty secret from the past 5 years. Release them, Katerina said, shocking everyone at the table. Release every document you have. I'm done being afraid of my past. You're bluffing. I'm not. My lawyers are ready. My accountants have everything documented. Yes, there will be questions. Yes, there will be scrutiny. But everything I've done in the last 3 years is legal and can withstand investigation. Can you say the same about your operations? The standoff was tense. Finally, Sergei stood. You're making a mistake, Katya. No, I made mistakes when I lived in fear. This is the first truly free choice I've made. After he left, Elena squeezed Katerina's hand. You're really going to let him release those files? I'm going to beat him to it. I'm going to release them myself. With full context and documentation. I'm done running from who I was. It's time to own all of it, the good and the bad. Katerina held a press conference 3 days later. She released a comprehensive document detailing her father's organization, her inheritance of it, and her systematic 3-year transformation of every aspect of the business. She included testimony from federal prosecutors who had worked with her during the transition, financial experts who verified every transaction, and community leaders who spoke to the impact of her foundation's work. The media storm was intense. Some outlets painted her as a reformed criminal trying to buy redemption. Others saw her as a case study in organizational transformation. Still others questioned whether true change was possible from such a dark beginning. Elena stood beside her through every interview, every question, every moment of scrutiny. As a doctor, as her wife, as her partner in every sense of the word. Why stay with her? One reporter asked Elena directly. Given her past, her family's history of violence, Elena looked at Katerina, then back at the reporter. Because I believe in the medical principle of healing. People aren't defined by their wounds, they're defined by how they choose to heal from them. Katerina chose to heal by building something better. She chose transformation over tradition, growth over fear, love over violence. That's the woman I married, not her past, but her choice to become something different. The response was powerful. Articles were written about redemption, about transformation, about the possibility of change. Not everyone was convinced, but enough people were willing to give Katerina the benefit of the doubt that her businesses continued to thrive. Sergei's threats evaporated in the face of Katerina's radical transparency. He couldn't destroy what she'd willingly revealed. Within 6 months, federal prosecutors had built a case against him for his continued criminal activities, and he was arrested. It's really over, Katerina said the day the news broke. The old life, the old threats, all of it. How does it feel? Elena asked. Terrifying, liberating. I spent so long living in shadows that I forgot what sunlight felt like. They were in their brownstone, curled up on the couch with the dogs at their feet. Just a normal evening in their extraordinary life. I want to tell you something, Elena said. I've been thinking about what's next for us. What do you mean? We've spent so much time fighting your past. Fighting for the trauma center. Fighting to build something legitimate. I want to spend time just living. What does that look like to you? I don't know exactly. Maybe having a family. Maybe traveling more. Maybe just having Sunday mornings where the biggest decision is whether to make pancakes or waffles. Katerina smiled. That brilliant smile that transformed her entire face. I like all of those options. Yeah, Elena, you've given me a life I never dreamed was possible. Whatever comes next, As long as it's with you, I'm in. They started the conversation about children adoption or surrogacy, domestic or international, the logistics and the dreams all tangled together. It wasn't urgent, but it was real, a future they were building together. The Volkov Foundation expanded, funding not just trauma centers, but addiction treatment, youth programs, and community development. Katerina poured her intelligence and resources into transformation on a wider scale, employing some of the same people who had worked for her father, but now in legitimate enterprises that helped rather than hurt communities. Elena published research on trauma treatment in underserved areas. Using data from the centers the foundation supported, her work gained national attention, leading to speaking engagements and policy consultations. "We're becoming quite the power couple," Sarah joked one evening over dinner. "The reform mob boss and the crusading doctor. We're just two people trying to do some good." Elena replied, "You're doing more than some good. You're changing systems." Both of you, it was true. Together, they created something neither could have built alone, a foundation for change that honored Katerina's business acumen and Elena's medical mission, that transformed resources once used for harm into tools for healing. On their second anniversary, they returned to the hospital roof garden where Katerina had proposed. The space had been renamed the Volkov Martinez Garden, a recognition of their joint contributions to the hospital. 2 years, Elena said, looking out over the city. "Feels like a lifetime. Feels like yesterday." Katerina countered, "I remember standing here, terrified you'd say no. Was there ever really any doubt? Always. You could have had someone easier, someone without all my complications." Elena turned to face her wife fully. "I didn't want easier. I wanted you. I wanted the complexity, the growth, the constant challenge of building something new. You make me better, Katerina. You make me braver. You saved my life. You gave my life new meaning." They kissed as the city lights flickered on around them. To women who had found each other in chaos and built something beautiful from the wreckage. Their story wasn't simple or perfect, but it was theirs, written in emergency rooms and boardrooms, in tears and laughter, in the hard work of transformation, and the sweet reward of love that endures. Below them, the trauma center buzzed with activity, saving lives just as Elena had saved Katerina's that fateful night. And above them, stars emerged in the darkening sky, constant and brilliant, bearing witness to a love that had overcome every obstacle to shine. The Mafia queen and the nurse had chased each other's hearts and found something neither expected, not just love, but redemption, not just partnership, but transformation, not just a happy ending, but a beautiful beginning. Because the best love stories don't end when the vows are spoken. They continue in the everyday moments of choosing each other, in the hard work of building something that lasts, in the courage to face the future together, whatever it may bring. And theirs was just beginning. The Volkov Foundation had become one of the largest contributors to medical care in underserved communities. Katerina's legitimate business empire had fully eclipsed her father's legacy. Though whispers of her past never fully disappeared, Elena was now chief of surgery, implementing trauma protocols that became models for hospitals nationwide. She still worked many hours, still fought too hard for her patients. But now she had someone waiting at home who understood the weight of those battles. They lived in a brownstone in Brooklyn, adopted to rescue dogs named Sasha and Anton, and hosted Sunday dinners for Elena's found family of colleagues and Katerina's slowly expanding circle of legitimate business associates. Were they perfect? No. Did they still struggle with the complexities of their different worlds? Absolutely. But they had learned that love wasn't about perfection, it was about showing up, being honest, and choosing each other every single day. And on quiet mornings, when Eleanor woke up to find Katerina watching her with those intense eyes that had first captured her attention in an emergency room, she knew without doubt that she had made the right choice. Because sometimes the most unexpected love stories are the ones that change everything.